The moment I opened her door, I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. I only meant to check on dinner. That was it. Just a quick question. Elara, are you hungry? But the second the door creaked open, the air inside her room pressed down on me like a weight. Elara froze. Not like a teenager caught scrolling her phone too late at night. No. This was different. Her shoulders went rigid. Her chest stopped mid-breath. Her hands twitched before she tucked them behind her back like she was trying to erase what I'd just seen. Dad? She stammered, voice high, shaky. I'm fine. But she wasn't. Her eyes betrayed her. Wide, darting, first to me, then sharply to the closet, then back to me again. The kind of look an animal gives before bolting. And that was when I smelled it. Not the vanilla perfume she always sprayed. Not the lingering scent of laundry detergent that clung to her blankets. No, this was different. Dust, old wood, and faint iron. Sharp, metallic, blood. My gut twisted, even though my mind scrambled for excuses. Elara, I said slowly, careful not to spook her. What's going on? She pressed herself tighter against the closet door, like her body alone could barricade whatever she was hiding inside. Her lips trembled, but she forced a smile. It's nothing, she whispered. Just private stuff. Private stuff? Since when did private smell like iron? I took a cautious step forward. The wooden floor creaked under my weight. Her head snapped up like I just set off an alarm. Stop, she blurted, too loud, too fast. Don't come closer. Her hand gripped the closet knob so tightly her knuckles turned white. Elara. I tried again, softer now. You're shaking. I said I'm fine. Her voice cracked. And then, almost instantly, she dropped her tone, lowering it into something calmer. Too calm. Forced. Dad, please. Just leave. Please. Her words didn't match her face. Her lips said please, but her eyes screamed don't look. And that contradiction, it broke me. Because for the first time in her life, I realized my daughter wasn't just keeping secrets. She was afraid of me seeing them. I swallowed hard. You know you can tell me anything. She laughed. Except it wasn't a laugh. It was hollow, brittle, like glass about to shatter. Not this, she murmured. Her eyes glistened. And just for a second, one fleeting second, I thought she might crack. That she might open the door and let me in. Let me see whatever truth she was choking on. But then her smile snapped back into place. A rehearsed mask. You're overthinking it, Dad. Seriously. It's just old junk in there. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But my stomach churned with unease. The air was too heavy. The silence between us too sharp. I stepped back, raising my hands in surrender. Okay. I'll trust you. Her relief came too quickly, too desperate. Thank you? She breathed, shoulders sagging. But even as I closed the door, her eyes never left mine. They followed me with a look I'd never seen before. Not guilt, not anger, something else. Fear. Not of what was inside that closet, but of what would happen if I ever found out. And that was the exact second Elara tried to hide something behind the closet. Dinner should have been ordinary, but her silence was screaming at me. The clink of cutlery against porcelain filled the kitchen, each scrape sharper than it should have been. I watched Elara from across the table, her fork pushing peas around her plate as if moving them could count as eating. She didn't meet my eyes once. My wife, Anna, noticed too. Elara, she said gently, is something wrong? You've barely touched your food. Elara's head snapped up too quickly. She forced a smile, one of those rehearsed ones I knew too well. I'm fine, Mom, she replied, her voice smooth, almost too smooth, but her hands betrayed her. When she set down her glass of water, it rattled against the coaster, trembling just slightly. I cleared my throat. You've been quiet all evening, I said, keeping my tone casual. Long day at school? Her fork froze midair. For a second, her eyes flicked toward me, and then just as quickly, she looked down again. Yeah, she muttered. Just tired. But it wasn't just tired. I knew my daughter. This was something else, something coiled tight inside her, waiting to snap. The silence stretched. Anna tried to fill it with light conversation, talking about errands, groceries, her coworker's birthday. But Elara didn't respond. Not really. Just nods, half smiles, her attention elsewhere. The air itself felt heavy, as if the house was holding its breath. Even the ticking clock seemed louder, mocking me with each second that passed without answers. Finally, Anna sighed, setting down her knife. Honey, you need to eat, she urged. Elara stabbed a piece of chicken, brought it to her mouth, and chewed with mechanical precision. Her jaw tightened with every bite, and her eyes stayed fixed on her plate. Something twisted in my chest. I wanted to demand the truth, to push her into confessing what she was hiding. But the words caught in my throat. If I pressed too hard, she might retreat further. After dinner, Elara stood abruptly. "I've got homework," she said, her chair scraping against the floor. "Wait," I said quickly. "We haven't even—" But she was already halfway to the stairs. "I'll be in my room," she called over her shoulder. Anna frowned at me. "You're pushing her too much," she whispered. "I didn't even say anything," I muttered back, frustration lacing my voice. "You're staring at her like she's guilty of something." Because she was. I couldn't shake it. The way she shielded the closet earlier, the panic in her eyes. It wasn't nothing. Hours later, the house had quieted. Anna had gone to bed, her steady breathing faint through the walls. I sat in the living room, the glow of the TV flickering across my face, though I wasn't watching. My thoughts circled the same place. Elara's trembling hands, her hollow smile, the weight pressing down on her shoulders. I needed to know. I crept up the stairs, careful to avoid the step that creaked. Her door was shut, a thin line of dim light visible beneath it. I paused, hand hovering over the knob, my pulse hammering. And then I heard it. Scratch. A faint, dragging sound, like something scraping against wood. My breath caught. Scratch. Not once but twice. Deliberate. Measured. Too slow to be accidental. I leaned closer, pressing my ear to the door. The silence returned for a beat, thick and suffocating. My chest tightened, every nerve screaming at me to open the door, to see what she was hiding. But before I could move, the sound came again. Scratch. And that was the moment my blood ran cold. And then, from behind her door, I heard the first scratch. I wasn't supposed to snoop, but the lock on her closet changed everything. The moment I pushed open Elara's bedroom door, a strange chill rolled over me. Not the kind that comes from an open window or a draft. This was heavier. Like the air itself resisted me being there. I stood frozen in the doorway, clutching the knob tighter than I needed to, as if my own daughter's room had suddenly turned hostile. Her bed was perfectly made, tighter than any teenager would normally care for. The curtains were drawn halfway, muting the light into a pale gray wash that made her posters look faded, ghost-like. A faint smell lingered, metallic, almost like iron, but sharp enough to sting at the back of my throat. I swallowed hard and forced myself to move. I wasn't here to linger, I told myself, just to make sure everything was normal. But nothing about this felt normal. Then I saw it, the closet door. It wasn't the same as I remembered. I blinked twice to make sure I wasn't imagining it, but no, there was a heavy black padlock hanging from the latch. Thick, industrial, the kind you'd expect to see on a storage unit, not a teenage girl's closet. My chest tightened. Why would Elara need this? My hand shook slightly as I reached out and touched the metal. Cold. Colder than it should have been. My fingertips traced along its edges until they brushed something else. Deep scratches carved into the wooden frame. Not random scuffs, not wear and tear. These were deliberate, violent. They streaked downward in uneven lines like claw marks. And that's when my stomach dropped. They weren't on the outside of the frame. They were inside. As if something had tried to claw its way out. I stepped back, my breath catching in my throat. My mind raced, images of Elara dragging something into her room, locking it away, hiding it, or worse, being forced to hide herself from something in there. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Elara," I whispered without meaning to, my voice trembling. "What the hell are you hiding?" I crouched down, pressing my ear to the door. The silence was deafening. Too perfect. No rustle of fabric, no creak of wood. Just the sound of my own breath coming too fast. For a wild second, I considered breaking it open, grabbing something heavy, smashing the padlock, demanding an explanation later. But then I heard it, footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate. The boards creaked under weight that wasn't mine. I jerked upright, panic clawing at my chest. She was back. She couldn't see me here, not like this. My pulse spiked as I darted for the door, moving as quietly as I could manage. The doorknob slipped under my sweaty palm, but I managed to pull it open just in time. The footsteps grew closer. "Elara?" I forced my voice steady, casual, as if I'd just wandered past. The sound stopped. A beat of silence stretched thin across the air before she finally answered, her voice flat. "Yeah?" I leaned against the wall, my chest heaving in shallow bursts I prayed she couldn't hear. "Nothing, just making sure you're home," I said, trying to sound offhand. The pause that followed was too long. Then, faintly, okay. Her door didn't open. She didn't step out. The hallway remained empty. I slipped away, every nerve in my body screaming. Because as I left her room behind, one thought consumed me. Those scratches weren't made from the outside. They were made from within. At night, her room became alive with whispers I wasn't meant to hear. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, pretending to be asleep, but my mind was anything but still. The house was quiet, or so I thought. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of the old wooden beams sounded amplified in the darkness. Around 2 a.m., that unmistakable sound returned, the scratching. It started soft, almost like fingernails brushing against wood, hesitant, testing. My stomach twisted into knots as my pulse quickened. I could hear it coming from Alara's room. My chest tightened so suddenly I nearly gasped. Then, beneath the scratching, a whisper, a tremulous, terrified whisper. "Don't, please stop!" Her voice, shaky, broken. I froze, my hand trembling on the doorknob. My mind screamed at me to burst in, throw open the door, hold her close, demand answers. But something, fear, instinct, something deeper, kept me rooted to the spot. If she was in danger, why wouldn't she call me? Why didn't she scream? I pressed my ear to the door. Faint murmurs layered over each other, unintelligible yet charged with fear. One of them was hers, trembling, pleading. Another, not hers. A colder, steadier tone, almost mockingly calm, hissed beneath the tremor of her words. I clenched the doorknob so hard my knuckles went white. My own heartbeat filled my ears, each thump deafening in the silence of the hallway. I debated calling her name, but my voice felt trapped in my throat. The air was thick, metallic-scented, like the room itself held its breath. I could feel the hairs on my arms standing on end. The whispering ceased suddenly, replaced by a silence so oppressive it pressed down on me, heavy, suffocating. I shifted my weight, trying to see if the light from the hallway would give me any clue, but the door remained solid, unyielding, and the shadows swallowed everything inside. My mind raced. Was this some elaborate game? Had I imagined the second voice? No. Too precise, too deliberate. "Ilara?" I murmured, barely audible. No reply. Only the echo of my own voice, small and weak, bouncing back at me from the walls. My hand left the doorknob and hovered, trembling, over the lock. I thought of breaking the door down, but hesitation anchored me again. A single thought clawed at my mind. If I intruded, if I forced my way in, would I make it worse for her? The whispers, or one of them, had returned in memory, lingering at the edge of my hearing. I could feel her fear, and something else, malice, a presence that wasn't hers. I sank to my knees in the hallway, the cold floor biting through my pajama pants. The silence pressed closer. I pressed my ear to the door one last time, straining to catch anything at all. And then, nothing. Just the echo of my own heartbeat. My body shook as I sat there, paralyzed by dread and confusion. Questions clawed at my mind, unrelenting. Who else was in there? What was happening to my daughter? Why hadn't she come to me? And if I was standing outside her door, listening, who was inside? I stayed there long after the house returned to its usual quiet, long after the whispers faded, just listening to the sound of my own racing heart, and the realization that I was no longer sure of anything. Because somewhere in that room, Alara's fear had a companion. And I swear, one of the voices wasn't hers. And I swear, one of the voices wasn't hers. Robert's shadow had always lingered, but suddenly it felt darker. I noticed him the moment I walked into the hallway. Uncle Robert, leaning casually against the doorway of Alara's room, but not casually at all. His jaw was tight, fingers twitching against his side as if some invisible tension demanded release. He caught my gaze and forced a laugh, but it fell flat, too sharp, too rehearsed. I could see the tiny flicker in his eyes, the micro-expression of annoyance, or maybe guilt, that he tried desperately to hide. "Alara's home early today," I said, trying to sound neutral, but my stomach nodded. Robert's forced smile didn't reach his eyes. "Just checking in," he said, voice smooth but hollow. His hands were still moving, twitching ever so slightly, like a coiled spring threatening to snap. He leaned closer to the door and then paused, as if debating something silently, before stepping back. I swallowed hard. There was something in the way he lingered, in the way his gaze slid over the room without actually entering it, that made my skin crawl. The air around him felt colder, heavier, and for a second, I thought I could smell something. Copper, iron, like blood, faint but unmistakable. My mind tried to rationalize it, but the instinct in my gut screamed otherwise. "Everything okay?" I asked again, voice tight. "Yes, of course," he replied quickly, almost too quickly. The way he said it, sharp, clipped, made my chest tighten. It wasn't concern. It was controlled, deliberate, the kind of tone people use when hiding something they know will shock you if revealed. Elara appeared in the hallway just then, her small frame silhouetted by the dim light. The moment Robert's name slipped from mine, her eyes flickered, darted to the floor, then back up to me. A subtle flinch. Barely noticeable, but I saw it. And in that instant my blood ran cold. She knew something about him, or he knew something about her, that I didn't. "Uncle Robert, can I borrow your ladder for my project?" she asked, trying to mask her fear with casualness, but her hands shook slightly as she reached for the notebook tucked under her arm. Robert's eyes softened, or at least he tried to make them appear softer. "Sure, Elara. Anything you need," he said, but the twitch of his jaw betrayed him, and his gaze lingered just a moment too long. Too long. I could feel it. He wasn't just her uncle anymore. He was something else, an intruder in ways I hadn't accounted for. I wanted to grab her, pull her away, demand the truth. But I held myself back, studying him instead, watching every micro-expression, every twitch of his fingers, every fraction of a second that revealed more than he intended. His performance was impeccable on the surface, helpful, charming, unthreatening. Beneath that, though, tension coiled like a snake ready to strike. And then it clicked. The way Elara's gaze had never left me, even when he spoke. She was afraid. Not just of him being stern or imposing, but something deeper. Something he had done, or perhaps something he knew. The thought twisted my stomach into tight, painful knots, a knot I couldn't untangle. "Everything all right, Dad?" Elara asked softly, her voice trembling ever so slightly. She stepped closer to me, her shoulder brushing mine for reassurance. "Yes," I said, though my voice was low, uncertain. I wanted to believe it, but the truth simmered beneath my words. I watched Robert carefully, noting how he straightened, smiled, then left without another word. The shadow he left behind seemed to linger longer than him, pressing into the walls of our home, into the spaces where I thought we were safe. I didn't say a word as he walked away, but the questions swarmed my mind. What did he know? Why did Elara flinch? And most importantly, how long had this shadow been darkening our lives without me noticing? I could feel it, subtle but unmistakable. Uncle Robert wasn't just nearby. He was watching, waiting, and I had no idea for what. And Elara's fear told me, more than anything else, that he already knew something I didn't. And Elara's fear told me he knew something I didn't. The little thing started screaming louder than words. It began with the receipts. Crumpled, forgotten, tucked into the side pocket of Elara's backpack. Hardware stores I didn't recognize, purchases that didn't make sense. I tried to dismiss them at first, chalk it up to school projects or curiosity, but my gut wouldn't let me. Then came the missing cash, small amounts at first, vanishing from my wallet with no explanation. Each disappearance was like a tiny thread being pulled, unraveling the fabric of trust one had in my daughter. And then there were the bruises, faint, pale purples and blues along her wrists, disappearing almost as quickly as they appeared. I asked her gently one evening while she was brushing her hair in front of the mirror. "Elara, are you hurting yourself?" My voice was careful, soft, afraid of scaring her. She froze. Her comb dropped with a metallic clink, and she whipped around. Her eyes were wide, defensive. "It's nothing, Dad!" she snapped, voice sharp and small but edged with anger I'd never heard from her before. And just like that, she stormed out of the room, the door slamming behind her with a hollow bang that echoed in my chest. I stood there, staring at the empty hallway, my fingers brushing the cool wood of the doorframe. My chest ached with the weight of unasked questions. I could still smell it, smoke, faint and curling like it had lingered just long enough to escape detection. Not from a candle or incense, nothing burning in the house. It was subtle, unsettling, a presence rather than a scent. That night sleep eluded me. Every creak of the floorboards, every faint rustle from her room, made my heart leap. I paced, trying to make sense of the small, scattered clues. Receipts, missing money, bruises, smoke, none of it fit together naturally. I was losing her, piece by piece, and the image forming in my mind was one I didn't want to see. Yet each clue pulled me forward, an invisible thread dragging me toward truths I was terrified to confront. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe she was hanging out with new friends, experimenting, making mistakes. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just rebellion. There was fear there, buried beneath the defiance, reflected in the quick glances she gave her closet when she thought I wasn't looking. Every time she brushed past me, her shoulder barely touched mine, but the tension in her body screamed volumes. I started leaving subtle notes in her room, gentle reminders, offers to talk, but she ignored them. The silence grew heavier each day, pressing down like a suffocating weight. Even my wife noticed the change, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the small, incriminating details I had started noticing: receipts, bruises, faint smell of smoke. They were pieces of a puzzle I wasn't ready to solve. And yet my intuition screamed that it all led back to the closet. It was closed now, silent, almost innocent in its stillness, but I could feel it. Every small piece pointed toward it. Each clue, each hidden bruise, each vanished dollar, each inexplicable smell, every secretive glance from Alara. They weren't isolated. They were components of a pattern, one that converged on the locked, reinforced closet that had stared back at me with cold indifference weeks ago. I ran my hand along its smooth, unyielding surface. My fingers traced the padlock, the scratches around the frame, faint, jagged, unnerving. The thought of what could be behind that door made my stomach twist, but I couldn't stop now. I couldn't ignore it any longer. Whatever was hidden in there was the heart of this puzzle, and I was terrified of what the pieces might reveal. Sleep became impossible. Every creak, every whisper of movement, every faint smell of smoke from her room gnawed at me. My own heartbeat sounded deafening in the quiet of the night, each thump a countdown to something inevitable. And in the silence, I realized something that made my blood run cold. I wasn't just discovering pieces of a puzzle. I was being led to a trap I didn't even know existed. And each piece led me back to the closet. I finally asked the question I'd been avoiding. The kitchen felt smaller than usual that evening, walls closing in, the fluorescent light buzzing above like it was holding its breath. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The receipts, the smoke, the bruises, the locked closet, they had to mean something. I found her there, leaning against the counter, fiddling with a spoon she didn't use. Her movements were jerky, tense, every muscle coiled like a spring. "Alara," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's behind that closet?" She froze. Her fork clattered to the tile, a sharp, metallic crack that made my stomach lurch. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating, darting from me to my wife, back to the counter, as if seeking escape in any direction. I had never seen her like this, so small, so exposed, yet teetering on the edge of defiance. "You don't understand," she whispered, voice trembling, almost breaking. Tears shimmered in the corners of her eyes, threatening to spill, and her hands twisted into fists at her sides. The air between us seemed to pulse, thick with unspoken truths, each second stretching impossibly long. My wife appeared behind me, concern etched in her face. "Alara, what's going on?" she asked softly, her hand reaching out, hesitating in the charged space. Alara recoiled, a flicker of panic crossing her face. "No! Just leave me alone!" she shouted, shoving past us with unexpected strength, slamming her bedroom door so hard the frame shuddered. The padlock clicked into place, a cold, final sound that seemed to echo through the house. We pounded on the door, our fists reverberating against the wood. "Alara, please talk to us!" I shouted, desperation breaking through my measured tone. Silence answered. The only sound was our own breaths, ragged, loud, magnified in the tense, still kitchen. My heart pounded, drumming against my ribs, each beat screaming warnings I didn't want to hear. Finally, a faint creak, the lock turning, and the door cracked open. She appeared in the frame, shoulders hunched, eyes shadowed with fear, voice barely audible. "If you knew, you'd hate me." The words hit me like ice water. I wanted to step forward, to hold her, to demand more, but I froze. My mind raced, trying to parse her tone. It wasn't denial, it wasn't deflection, it was a warning, loaded and deliberate. Her lips trembled, as if each word cost her something vital. What do you mean?" I whispered, voice hoarse, trying to mask the panic threatening to overtake me. Her gaze didn't waver. She stepped back slightly, pressing her palm against the doorframe for support. "Some things are better left locked," she said, and the subtle tremor in her jaw betrayed the terror she was holding back. I could see it in her eyes, the flickers of shame, fear, and something darker I couldn't yet name. I wanted to scream, to tear down that door, to uncover the truth, but part of me hesitated. That warning had weight. There was danger in knowing, danger in prying further. And yet every instinct I had, the father, the protector, was screaming that I couldn't ignore her, couldn't let her shut me out. The kitchen seemed to shrink further, the smell of faint smoke lingering, almost clinging to the corners of the walls. I could hear the fridge humming, the distant tick of the clock, but it all faded beneath the sound of my racing thoughts. Each beat of my heart echoed like a drum of war, push forward, or pull back, the line between care and confrontation razor thin. I swallowed, trying to steady my voice. Elara, I'm not going to hate you. I just need to know. She flinched at my words, but didn't retreat. Instead, she whispered, low, almost mournful. Some truths aren't meant for your eyes, not yet. Her warning wrapped around me like a fog, heavy and suffocating, leaving a chill that settled in my chest. And though she had said so little, the gravity of it hung between us, tangible, unyielding. I realized that whatever I thought I knew, whatever puzzle I had been piecing together, it was only the surface. The real story, the darkness behind the locked closet, was far larger, far more dangerous than I had dared imagine. And Elara's answer wasn't denial, it was a warning. The closet wasn't hiding clothes, it was hiding a prison. I found the key the way secrets often reveal themselves, accidentally yet perfectly placed. A loose floorboard in Elara's room, just near the corner where the sunlight faded into shadow. My hands trembled as I pried it open, the wood groaning softly under my pressure. Beneath it lay a small, rusted key, coated with dust and something darker, almost metallic. My stomach turned. The moment she left for school, I acted. I slipped the key into the padlock, the metal clicking with a sound that made my pulse spike. The door groaned as it swung open, revealing the hidden space beyond. The first thing that hit me was the smell, iron, mildew, a metallic tang that made my throat tighten. It was sharp, suffocating, a scent that clawed at the back of my mind. I stepped in cautiously, the floor creaking beneath my weight. The walls were lined with old wallpaper, peeling in long, curling strips, yellowed and torn like decaying skin. A mattress lay crumpled on the floor, stained dark in several places. I stepped closer, my boots echoing unnaturally in the small, windowless room. Chains dangled from the walls, each link rusted but ominously strong. My hands went cold. My heart hammered so hard I could hear it over the quiet of the room. Someone had been here. Or someone had been kept here. I wanted to step back, to slam the door, and pretend I had never seen this horror. But something, curiosity, fear, a paternal instinct I couldn't name, kept me rooted to the spot. I ran my fingers along one of the chains. The metal was sticky with rust, the edges sharp. My mind raced, trying to imagine who could have been trapped here, how long, and why. Then, from the faint light of the hallway, I heard the front door slam. My blood froze. Elara was home. I barely had time to turn before her silhouette appeared in the doorway, shadowed against the late afternoon sun filtering through the hall window. Her eyes were wide, reflecting a mixture of fear, shame, and something else I couldn't name. "Dad?" she whispered, voice trembling, almost inaudible. The single word was heavy with accusation, with the weight of unspoken truths. I could see her hands curl into fists at her sides, knuckles white. She was small, but there was a fierceness in her posture, a warning that I had crossed a line she hadn't been ready to show me yet. I found it," I stammered, though my words felt hollow in the presence of her gaze. My mind raced, replaying every clue, the bruises, the receipts, the smoke, the locked closet. Each piece snapped together now, forming a horrifying picture I hadn't wanted to see. Her lips trembled, and a shiver ran down her spine that mirrored my own. "You weren't supposed to see this," she said, voice breaking, tears glinting in the corner of her eyes. Her stare pierced me, almost begging me to step back, but also warning me that stepping forward would shatter what little trust remained. The room seemed smaller, suffocating, filled with shadows and the heavy smell of iron. My breathing came fast and shallow, each inhalation tasting of dread. I wanted to apologize, to pull her into my arms, but her expression held me at bay. The chains swayed slightly as if disturbed by my presence, whispering reminders of the horror this closet had concealed. She took a hesitant step forward, then froze, like the weight of what had been hidden behind the door pressed down on her. "You shouldn't have done this," she said softly, the warning clear. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, and I could see the sharp edge of fear, the same fear I had felt in the whispering night. I swallowed hard, trying to steady my shaking hands. My voice was hoarse. "Elara, She cut me off with a sharp gesture, a silent plea to stop, to retreat. I realized then that the closet was more than a secret. It was a threshold I wasn't supposed to cross, a line between her pain and my curiosity. And yet, the sight of the chains, the mattress, the lingering smell of iron, burned itself into my memory. There was no unseeing it, no undoing the knowledge that someone, or something, had been trapped here. The hidden truth, long obscured, was finally revealed, and it terrified me more than any shadow or whisper could. And when I turned, Elara was standing in the doorway. The truth finally slipped from her lips, and it broke me. Her eyes widened as they met mine, frozen in the doorway of that dreadful closet. The dim light caught the moisture in her lashes, and I could see the terror coiled like a spring behind her pupils. She shook her head violently, the motion almost frantic. "You shouldn't have seen this," she whispered, voice trembling with both fear and shame. My knees weakened, the air thick and stifling around us. The metallic tang of rust and old iron still clung to my nostrils, mingling with the faint scent of her perfume. I wanted to speak, to steady her, to demand answers, but my mind spun with disbelief. "Elara, what happened here?" My voice cracked. It felt foreign, as if the horror of the closet had stolen control of my own vocal cords. Her lips quivered, eyes darting toward the chains, the mattress, the peeling wallpaper. It wasn't me," she stammered, swallowing hard. Her gaze fixed on the floor for a long moment before returning to mine. "It was Robert." The name struck like a bolt of ice straight to my chest. Robert, my uncle. The man I had trusted, the one who had always hovered, charming and helpful, always offering a smile that never reached his eyes. The blood drained from my face. "Robert?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. She nodded, tears sliding freely down her cheeks now, her voice rising with emotion. He locked me in here when I was younger. Told me that no one would ever believe me if I spoke. Said I'd ruin the family, ruin him, ruin everyone." Her hands twisted together in front of her, shaking. I thought it was my fault for years." I staggered backward slightly, horror mixing with a growing, searing anger. My hands trembled, fists clenching as the magnitude of what she had endured settled over me. How could someone so close, so trusted, do this to a child? To my daughter? I could see the fear etched into every line of her face, the way her shoulders hunched as if to make herself smaller, less noticeable, less likely to be harmed further. And yet, even in her terror, there was a flicker of defiance, a quiet warning that the truth, once revealed, could no longer be hidden. Why didn't you tell me?" I demanded, though my voice was hoarse, raw from disbelief and outrage. The room seemed to close in, the shadows of the peeling wallpaper stretching like specters across the walls. She shook her head, eyes brimming with tears. I was scared. He said no one would believe me. He said you'd hate me if you knew." Her voice cracked under the weight of years of silence and fear. I couldn't handle it. I thought maybe it would go away if I stayed quiet. Rage bubbled up inside me, burning hot and uncontainable. My pulse thundered in my ears as I pictured Robert, smiling, charming, trusted by everyone, while my daughter suffered in silence, hidden in this cramped, suffocating closet. Every lie, every forced smile, every visit he made under the guise of care, now twisted into evidence of his manipulation. I sank into the room, the mattress pressing cold beneath my hands, the chains swaying slightly as if disturbed by the turmoil in my heart. My mind raced, connecting the pieces, the bruises I had once ignored, the receipts, the small signs that had screamed for attention. They all pointed to one name: Robert, the man who had been like family, the man who had betrayed us utterly. Elara's small, quivering voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. "Dad, you have to promise me, you have to stop him. Don't let him get away with this. Please." Her words were a plea, a warning, and a command all at once. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt a wave of protectiveness so intense it almost drowned me. I swallowed, my jaw tight with determination. The fire in my chest matched the ice that had settled there when she first spoke his name. Robert's actions had crossed every boundary, every line. And now, the name on my tongue carried a weight that would fuel everything I did from this moment forward. "Robert," I muttered under my breath, letting the syllables linger. The word tasted bitter, heavy with rage and sorrow. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a crime, a stain on our lives that demanded reckoning. Her trembling eased slightly, the tension in her shoulders lessening as if sharing the secret had relieved some invisible weight. Yet the fear still lingered, shadowing her movements, echoing in the silence of the closet. I could feel the pieces of her suffering pressing into me, every bruise, every whispered threat, every day she had spent imprisoned in secrecy. The room was heavy, still, the oppressive scent of iron and mildew clinging to my clothes. I knew the moment I had been waiting for, the moment where innocence met betrayal, where trust shattered, and where the first spark of vengeance ignited. Robert's name was no longer just a label, it was a signal, the beginning of what had to be done. I clenched my fists, the cold metal of the chains brushing against my skin, a grim reminder of the horror hidden in our home. And I whispered, more to myself than to her, "Robert, you're going to pay." Robert's name was the beginning of my revenge. Robert's denial was worse than the truth, it was smug. "Kids make up stories," Robert said, folding his hands like a man comfortable in a courtroom. "She doesn't," I shot back. "She wouldn't invent chains, a mattress, a lock. Children embellish." He smiled, soft and practiced. "They want attention. They want drama. She has bruises." I kept my voice level. "She has receipts. She has a key I found." "Ah, proof." He tapped the table with a fingernail, casual. "Do you have proof beyond her words?" "I have her. I have what she showed me." My jaw tightened. "That closet is a prison." He leaned in, whispering as if the house could overhear. "Careful, brother. Digging up the past ruins people." "Ruin?" "She was ruined inside that room." I leaned toward him. "You smiled while she suffered. You hear monsters in every shadow," he said, shrugging. "Maybe families have stories that bend truth. This isn't storytelling." My fists flexed. "This is a crime. Words are slippery." He looked at me, calculating. "Memory shifts. People misremember." "You taught her fear," I said. "You told her no one would believe her." "Did I?" His voice dipped. "I taught consequence." "You protect her by believing her?" "No. I protect her by making sure he can't hurt anyone else." I spoke fast, the words cutting clean. "I will not be polite about this." Robert's forced grin faltered. His fingers drummed once, twice. Micro-movements, twitch at the jaw, a blink too long. He was practiced at masks, but masks slip. "You think exposing me helps?" he asked. "Do you know what that does to reputations? To families? It exposes a predator," I said. "What's your defense? Deny, intimidate, gaslight? Call it caution." He shrugged. "Call it preservation. Elara trusted me." My voice broke. "You took that from her." His posture tightened. "Accusation is a weapon," he whispered, low and cold. "Be careful where you point it." "Or what?" I asked. "You threaten me?" "I advise you." He smiled thinly. "This house has roots. Roots snap when tugged." "You will not scare me," I said. "You built a house of lies. I'll burn it down." He laughed, small and brittle. "And then what? You'll have ashes and enemies." "Ashes are better than silence," I said. "Silence ate my daughter." Elara's voice, thin and raw from the doorway. "Dad, please, don't let him talk to you like that. He's charming," my wife whispered behind me. "He can make anyone believe him." "He can make anyone?" I asked, looking at Robert. "Except Elara." Robert's smile tightened. "You're reckless. Recklessness breeds mistakes." "Maybe." I shrugged, feeling steady. "But it also ends monsters." He stood, palms flat. "Then proceed. Just remember, people fall with reputations, not with truth." "I'd rather fall knowing I tried," I said. He nodded, the motion slow, deliberate. "We'll see how far you push." The air tasted like copper and old coffee. His aftershave clung to the room. Voices around us felt louder, as if every neighbor overheard our small war. I catalogued his twitches, lip tremor, shoulder hitch, stored them like ammunition. Elara watched, pale as paper, clinging to a sleeve. My wife's hand squeezed my back. The anger inside me sharpened into planning. Threats wrapped in smiles meant fear. Fear meant he'd act. And if he acted, he'd leave traces. "You think evidence is neat?" Robert asked, voice low. "People change stories when pressured." "You'll fracture her memory." "I won't fracture anything," I said. "I'll gather truth, not force it." "You'll destroy bridges," he replied. "Families break, careers die." "Then let them break," I said. "Better broken than built on bones," he smiled thinly. "Resolve is noble until reality hits." "Reality is simple," I said. "She shut herself in that closet." "You lied." "That's reality." I counted each breath, each tiny lie. My list of evidence was growing steadily, and I knew then I had to destroy him very soon. If he wanted to play games, I'd make sure he lost. "I brought those files," Robert said, stepping into the hall, voice smooth like he owned the room. "Which files?" I asked, casual. A camera blinked red in the light fixture. "The estate papers." He shrugged, cleaning things up. Elara keeps secrets, I said. Some of them dangerous. He smiled. We all keep things. Family forgives. Does family lock children in closets? I stepped closer. His smile tightened. That's an ugly claim. Answer. You're being dramatic, he said, shifting his weight. Elara showed me chains, I said. A mattress. A padlock. Kids invent. He sneered. Memory isn't reliable. I found a key, I said. Receipts. Bruises. He tapped the table. You have nothing concrete. I have testimony. I kept my voice steady. I have footage. Footage? He blinked. You're bluffing. Come tonight, I said. Just you. We'll speak. He studied me. Why the show? Lies don't survive light. He smirked. You set traps. Truth is not a trap, I said. It's exposure. He left. We'll see. That night I planted another camera, hid a mic under a cushion, checked angles until the grainy screens showed the hallway. The house smelled like coffee and tension. The ticking clock felt loud enough to count breaths. My wife watched from the doorway, face pale under the kitchen light. Are you sure? She whispered. I have to be, I said. For Elara. She touched my arm. Just be careful. He knocked at 9, 3 taps. I opened. Neighbors will hear, I said, voice level. They hear gossip, he said, slipping inside. Then let them hear the truth. We sat at the kitchen table. He poured coffee, hand trembling. Little tells betrayed him, thumb rubbing the rim, a tight jaw, a foot that wouldn't stop tapping. Micro-expressions are louder than lies. So? He asked finally. What's this about? Why did you lock Elara in a closet? I asked bluntly. He stiffened. Ridiculous. Why would she be terrified of you? He slammed his mug down. You're spreading rumors. I'm protecting my child, I said. Why did you do it? Discipline, he said, jaw working. Boundaries. Chains aren't boundaries. You don't understand discipline, he snapped, trying to goad me. Explain it. I pushed the recorder closer, the red light merciless. He laughed, thin. You're naive. You taught her to be quiet, I said. You told her no one would believe her. That's a stretch. He spat. You twist words. You told a child to stay silent to protect your reputation, I said. That's on you. He stood abruptly. You'll regret this. Do you deny locking her? I asked. He froze, fingers drumming. I never. He lunged without warning, hand grabbing my shirt collar, trying to shove me back. The move was sudden and ugly, a petulant attempt at dominance. My recorder caught the rasp of his breath, the slap of fabric, the small, wet sound of his grip. Get off me! I shouted, and shoved him back. He staggered, eyes wild. Neighbors stirred. Footsteps outside, a distant door. The porch light clicked on. The trap had sprung. You're reckless, he spat, voice tight. Maybe, I said, but I won't let you hurt her again. You'll ruin us, he warned, voice low. I'll save her, I said. He sneered. Bring the court. Bring it, I said. My wife stepped forward. Do not come near Elara, she said, voice sharp. You're biased, he told her. We're done being quiet, she said. He looked at her as if weighing a verdict. Then bring the court, he repeated, softer. He left. We'll see. And the porch light punctuated his exit. I felt something shift, resolve, not relief. I waited. And my plan worked, too well. And my plan worked, too well. Robert's downfall wasn't quiet, it was explosive. I told you we had to act, I said, voice tight. You promise, Anna replied. You did. Neighbors sat on folding chairs. Police stood by the door, badges dull under the light. The recorder blinked red on the coffee table like a warning. Robert faced us, his comma paper mask already fraying. You're making a scene, he said. This is a circus. It's evidence, I said. Play it. Elara squeezed my hand, eyes hard. Do it, she mouthed. I hit play. A whisper. Don't make a sound. Then Elara, small and raw. Please stop. The room folded around those words. Robert's face twitched. Sweat beaded at his temple. Edited, he snapped. You staged this. You told her to be quiet. I shot back. You told her she'd ruin us. That's slander. He spat. You want to ruin me. Listen, Anna said, voice firm. Listen to yourself. She pointed at the recorder. The officer leaned forward, pen ready. Another clip played, his voice coaxing, then cold. Neighbors shifted. One woman covered her mouth. The old man, 2 rows back, whispered. God, you're lying. Robert raged. You'll pay. You trapped her. Elara said, voice small but steady. You locked me. His control snapped. He jumped up too fast, face red. You're a liar! He barked, charging. 2 officers were on him before he finished the move. Hands grabbed, cuffs clicked. He screamed, a raw, ugly sound that filled the house. He thrashed, spit flying, words slurring into threats. The officer's voice cut clear. Sir, you're under arrest. Phones came out. Whispers turned into a low hum of recording voices. Someone cried softly. Anna held Elara. My daughter shook against us. When they led him to the porch, his eyes hunted the crowd, wild and furious. He spat. She wanted it, but the words hit only shocked faces. The officer closed the door with a soft thud that felt like a final chord. The living room smelled of lemon cleaner, and the metallic bite of the key in my pocket. Plates of casserole appeared on the doorstep the next day, neighbors trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. The officer gave me a card, a promise of process and paperwork. We'll investigate, he said. We'll need statements. Do it, I answered. Why didn't you tell us? A neighbor asked later, voice rough. We tried, Anna said. We were afraid of being wrong. The officer asked questions, wrote notes, eyes steady and unblinking. We have statements, recordings, he said. That gives us grounds. He spoke like an anchor. At the station, Robert still tried to smile through a glass window. You made a spectacle, he said. But truth bends. We'll see the truth, the detective answered, uninterested in Robert's theatrics. Back home, life rerouted into forms and calls. Therapy appointments were scheduled. Distant relatives phoned, voices low. Elara began to tell her story again and again, each repetition peeling back a layer, making it lighter and heavier at once. I catalogued the recordings into folders, duplicated them, labeled them, held them like talismans. At night his scream echoed in my head, a bruise on the world that wouldn't fade. Justice moved forward, arrests, reports, the slow mechanical progress of officialdom. But the sound of him losing control stayed with me. It would follow us into courtrooms and interviews and quiet rooms where Elara tried to sleep. I replayed the tapes alone later, listening to his voice turn from coaxing to cruel. Each sentence I heard sharpened into evidence, and also into wounds I had to tend. The mask was off, the monster exposed. That counted for something, but it wasn't a cure. But I should have known monsters don't go quietly. Hook, justice had been served, but peace never came. I thought arrest would close the door. It didn't. The house felt wrong, as if it remembered every sound and refused to let them go. Elara stopped leaving her room. She ate standing in the doorway, 2 bites, then retreated. Light moved through the curtains like it was cautious. Even the air smelled faintly of metal sometimes, a reminder that the closet had existed. Therapy began, the counselor with a soft voice and notepad. Tell me when you're ready, she said. Elara answered with short sentences, mostly apologies. She said sorry, as if surviving was shameful. My wife tried to keep things normal. Anna hummed while folding laundry, but her eyes always found Elara's door. Visitors brought casseroles, church ladies prayed. Polite messages arrived from relatives. They felt helpful and hollow. At night, the wallpaper in the closet seemed to breathe. The paper curled differently when lights were off, edges lifting like a thin chest inhaling. I would stand outside Elara's door and listen. The house held small noises, the heater's low hum, the clock's tick, a radiator pop. Each sound sharpened into meaning. Every creak felt like proof that the house remembered what had happened inside those walls. We kept evidence organized. A tin with the padlock key, receipts in an envelope, copies of recordings. The detective called regularly. Case moving, he would say, then add, it's slow. Those calls were anchors. They reminded me the world still used rules and that we had given it truth. Elara slept poorly. She jolted awake if someone whispered. A dropped plate made her flinch. Once, a child laughed outside and she pressed her palms to her ears. I learned her small movements, a tightened jaw, a swallowed breath, a gaze that avoided corners. Each tiny thing told me she carried more than bad memories. She carried a lesson taught by a man we had trusted. Legal steps felt urgent and distant. Filing statements, meeting detectives, signing forms, depositions, practical tasks that made the wound visible. Elara went to a hearing. She sat like a statue, hands folded, eyes on the table. Afterward she whispered, "They asked a lot." Her voice was flat. It cost her to repeat what she had been through. I held her and felt more useless than protective. Then the letter arrived. A plain envelope, no return address, my name written in a hand that tightened my throat. I should have given it to the detective. Instead I slid it open at the kitchen table, hands shaking. The single sheet smelled faintly of smoke. The ink was neat and personal, referencing small memories only family would share. It mentioned a picnic by the river, a joke from years ago, then slid into threats disguised as assurances. Patience, it read. We watch. The words were precise, meant to wound. Each detail reminded me what could be taken: trust, reputation, the fragile peace we tried to build. The paper felt colder than paper should. My hands tightened until the edges bit my skin. Anna read the top lines over my shoulder. Her face went white. Call the detective, she said. I will, I replied. My voice sounded small. I had done the right thing by exposing him, but the letter proved cages do not silence every monster. They change him, or make him find new ways to seep into our lives. I folded the letter carefully. Outside, a dog barked twice. Inside, Elara's breathing through the thin door sounded like a slow drum. The house held its breath with us. I realized revenge was not a single act but a long, careful climb. Evidence, patience, witnesses, everything had to be precise. I would not let anger make me reckless. For Elara, I would move like a shadow, silent, steady, inevitable. No mercy. Because Robert's words were waiting in the envelope. His words bled off the page, mocking, taunting, promising. I unfolded the envelope slowly, my hands trembling. The paper felt wrong, too smooth, too deliberate. The first line hit like ice. You think you know the whole truth, but Elara only told you part of it. My stomach clenched. Every nerve in my body screamed. I read it again, louder this time, my voice shaking in the empty kitchen. Elara sat on the edge of her bed, knees drawn up, eyes fixed on the floor. She didn't move when I called her name, didn't answer when I asked if she wanted to see it. Her silence was heavier than the paper in my hands. I don't want to talk about it, she whispered finally, voice brittle. I nodded, swallowing back anger and fear. The letter traced our past like a scalpel. Birthdays, dinners, private jokes, moments that felt safe, were twisted into threats. Remember the picnic by the river? You laughed, thinking it was just fun. But you forgot who was watching. Every word was a needle. I could feel them prick my skin, digging into memory and fear. Smoke lingered in the room, faint, sweet, acrid, though nothing burned. It made me dizzy, like the letter carried a ghost. I pressed the paper to my chest. He knows everything, I muttered, mostly to myself. My reflection in the glass of the framed photograph across the room looked older, hollowed. The man staring back had fought, planned, hunted, and yet this simple sheet of paper made him feel small, weak, vulnerable. The handwriting was neat, almost affectionate, but the cruelty was unmistakable. You think the cage is closed, but the door only clicks. I am never far. Patience, always patience. I felt a twist in my gut, a coldness sliding down my spine. This wasn't just a threat, it was a reminder of power, a promise that he could reach us anytime he wanted. I set the letter down on the counter and ran my fingers over its edges. I wanted to tear it apart, burn it, flush it down the toilet, but a part of me couldn't. It was evidence, proof that he existed, proof that the danger wasn't over. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the panic, but the words lingered. Elara didn't speak. She stayed curled in her blanket, silent. I could see the way her hands shook slightly, the way she avoided my eyes. I wanted to hold her, to tell her it was over, that Robert was behind bars. But the letter had reopened wounds I thought were stitched. The trust, the innocence, the calm. I realized none of it would ever return. Dad, she finally murmured. I knelt beside her. She shook her head slightly. No questions, no explanations, only fear, raw and real. The letter had stolen words from her mouth before they could even form. I stared at it one last time. You are weak. You always react before you think. Enjoy your peace. It will be fleeting. My jaw clenched. I wanted to scream, to throw it across the room, but all that came out was a tight whisper. This isn't over. And deep down, I wondered, what if Robert was right? The house is quiet now, but silence is sometimes worse than noise. Quiet settled in like a weight. After court and arrests the rooms went silent, but the silence remembered. Elara kept the light on. She walked the hallway like someone avoiding a wound. I stood in the kitchen, coffee cooling, watching small habits, where she left shoes, how she sidestepped the closet. At night the wallpaper seemed to breathe. In the dark the pattern shifted, and my skin prickled. I pressed my palm to the closet door. The wood felt warm and oddly alive. The smell of iron came and went, a metallic ghost that clung to my throat. I breathed it in and felt memory tighten like a fist. Once Anna asked, Do you want to talk? Elara answered. No. I'm fine. Too fast. She throws words away now like stones, short, blunt, meant to stop a path. I tried to burn the curtains once, a stupid flare of rage. Smoke filled the house and Anna stopped me. The match went out between my fingers and Elara whispered, "Don't," and that small sound pulled me back. We took her to therapy. The counselor asked for a safe place. Elara closed her eyes and named a beach we visited years ago. For a moment she became that child again, loud and light, and I watched relief pass over her face. When the house slept I stood outside Elara's door and listened. The heater clicked and underneath I heard a soft scratch, like a nail on wood. I told myself it was the house settling. I told myself a lot of easy things to keep the other thoughts at bay. An envelope arrived weeks after the trial. The handwriting made my stomach drop. He remembered details he had no right to know. The paper smelled faintly of smoke. His words promised patience and watchfulness. I tucked it in a drawer and hid it from Elara. Anna said, "You'll be okay." But neither of us believed it fully. The court had removed him, but it couldn't unteach fear. Justice was a document. It did not stitch the small, private pieces back together. It did not stop Elara from flinching when a door creaked. Sometimes I thought about leaving the house, sell it, move somewhere new where the walls had different echoes. Elara refused. "This is my home," she said. Her voice was steady and it broke me. I hid the key, not because anyone could open that door easily, but because the knowledge that it existed weighed on all of us. At the window I watched my reflection, older, drawn. Scars lived under skin in ways words did not measure. I kept the evidence organized, photos, receipts, copies of recordings. The detective called. "We're processing." The phrase should have steadied me. It didn't. Some nights, in the thick quiet, I thought I heard a voice so low I could blame the pipes. "You did this." It seemed to whisper, and the sound tightened the muscles in my jaw. I do not know if the voice came from the house or from the fray of sleep. Maybe either. Then, impossibly, a thought surfaced, fierce and wrong and true in a way that stopped me cold. Perhaps the door was never only his. Maybe it belonged to Elara too. Maybe she had given part of herself to the room just to survive, and left it there like a piece of clothing. The idea made my chest ache. I considered burning the house down, but Elara begged me not to. "It's still my home," she said. The night presses in. The wallpaper ripples. The iron scent returns. I sit with the key in my pocket and listen. The silence keeps counsel. I don't sleep very well. Because maybe the door was never Robert's. Maybe it was Elara's all along.